Even if you're not interested in anime, you've probably heard of the name Your Name, one of the anime movies with the highest revenue of all time. However, few people know that. In 2016, a less noticed anime unexpectedly surpassed the blockbuster Your Name to win the Best Animated Film Award at the Japan Academy Prize, which is considered the Japanese Oscars. That movie is In This Corner of the World, set in Hiroshima, Japan during World War II. In This Corner of the World tells the story of Suzu Urano, a young girl struggling with daily life overcoming the tragedy of the Dark War. But the film does not focus on intense battles on the front lines with smoke, fire, and death always lurking. Instead, it focuses on the ordinary life of ordinary people during wartime, creating a very close and familiar feeling, gentle but no less profound, sadly lingering but haunting. The story of little girl Suzu sends a powerful message of perseverance in the face of hardship and hope for a bright future. So what helped In This Corner of the World beat a huge movie like Your Name? In a life filled with harsh twists and turns, is keeping a carefree mind the right choice to face it all? In today's video, let's step into a corner of life to find the answer. Taking the perspective of Suzu Urano, a small, innocent, and lovely girl, In This Corner of the World draws viewers closer to the lives of ordinary people, depicting beautiful little details. Suzu grows up in the love and protection of her family. This love not only nurtures her into a good and kind child, but also paints Suzu's soul with magical, dreamy strokes. Like the time she got lost in the city, Suzu was carried home by a big uncle, whom she called a monster, in a giant basket on his back. Or another time when she visited her grandmother, Suzu encountered a werewolf stealing watermelon. Not at all afraid, Suzu excitedly cut more watermelon and even left behind a new kimono her grandmother had made for her to give to her strange new friend. Little Suzu revealed her artistic talent from a very young age. Her rich imagination and gentle heart helped her paintings always carry a simple look with bright colors. One time while gathering firewood by the sea, Suzu saw her classmate Mizuhara painting. Asked to help, Suzu immediately painted a seascape with waves that looked like white rabbits jumping around. Even Mizuhara, who didn't like the sea because his brother was about to join the Navy, was amazed by the peaceful, bright colors Suzu painted the dull seascape with. Time flew by, and when Suzu turned 18, she received a marriage proposal. Thinking it was Mizuhara who proposed, Suzu felt a slight sadness when she realized the proposer was not her classmate, but a stranger from Kure. Nevertheless, Suzu did not refuse the one she didn't know well. She had no idea that the man who wanted to marry her was the little boy who sat with her in the big basket of the monster uncle when she was little. Always remembering the image of the little girl from years ago, Zusaku Hozo tried every way to meet Suzu again, to protect her for the rest of her life. And so, like a magical destined relationship, the naive girl Suzu now had to learn how to become a wife who takes care of the family home. Interweaving humorous details into a war-themed movie is not easy, but In This Corner of the World did it very subtly. Stepping into married life in a completely unfamiliar place, Suzu's naive and somewhat clumsy personality made viewers laugh. She couldn't remember the names or surnames of her parents-in-law, mistook the matchmaker for her future mother-in-law, and even casually took off her outer clothes right at the wedding ceremony in front of everyone. That was the beginning of a series of embarrassing moments for Suzu and her new family. She wanted to send a letter back to Hiroshima, but didn't know her husband's family's address. She wanted to help the neighbors carry water, but ended up making them fall. Suzu's clumsiness became even more apparent when her sister Keiko came to live with the family. In contrast to Suzu, who was always slow and clueless, Keiko was quick and agile, but hot-tempered. Keiko did all the housework that Suzu usually did because she thought Suzu was too slow, even though she tried to change herself, using all her skills to sew a new-style kimono. Suzu was still criticized by Keiko for being too ugly. Too tired of her clumsy younger sister, Keiko suggested Suzu go back to her mother's house, but Suzu naively thought she was going home for a visit. Her husband's family also agreed to let her go back to Hiroshima for a few days. Life at home helped her let go of the pressure, to the point where she thought getting married was just a dream. On the day she returned to Kure, just because she stopped to draw the buildings in the city, Suzu couldn't buy a train ticket, so she had to go back to her parents' house to wait for the next day. Suzu's parents didn't know what to say, and were also worried about their in-laws in Kure. Despite being clumsy and forgetful, Suzu's presence brought joy to the Hojo family. Suzu's peaceful atmosphere and gentleness, unlike the hot-tempered Keiko, made her niece Harumi particularly fond of her. However, Harumi's concerns sometimes put Suzu in difficult situations. Because Suzu was worried that her husband's family's affairs would make her bald, Harumi asked her mother to buy drawing ink to paint over Suzu's bald spots. Suzu's silly scenes don't make viewers feel uncomfortable. On the contrary, they are very relatable, making us easily sympathize with a girl who is learning to be an adult. The daily chores, though repetitive, are not boring at all but draw viewers into a peaceful and pleasant rhythm of life. Life as a daughter-in-law far from home is hard, but Suzu still finds simple happiness in the family's bond. Suzu's lovely naivety has turned challenges into memorable and joyful memories. In her free time, Suzu often sits with her husband in a small corner of the field to look out at the vast sea. The filmmakers were extremely clever in placing two contrasting images next to each other, the small dandelion and the giant warships. Although the dandelion is fragile in the wind, it has a strong vitality, sprouting wherever the wind takes it. The weak dandelions are like the people in society at that time. They are everywhere, not outstanding, not great people. However, they carry a desire to live and an extremely strong survival instinct. The warships that Zusaku showed Suzu have a completely different meaning. Among those giant warships is the Yamato, the largest battleship in human history, the pride of the Japanese Navy. However, it is just a killing machine that brings pain and loss. In Suzu's eyes, the ships are not as noteworthy as the fragile but resilient dandelion. The image of the dandelion and the warships highlights the contrast between the lives of ordinary people and the turbulent era. In 1944, the Japanese Empire fell into a state of decline and crisis due to losses on the battlefield, and food became increasingly scarce. For Suzu and the people, the distant battlefield was not as important as finding food to live each day. Suzu had to learn how to prepare new dishes, not only delicious but also capable of being stored for a long time. Following the instructions of her neighbors, she went to gather wild vegetables to add to the family's meals. But there were also times when Suzu failed. For example, the puffy rice porridge, going through many steps, from roasting rice to simmering and then incubating. The rice bowls, although swollen, were not enough to fill her father and husband's stomachs. Difficulties piled up again. Suzu and Harumi discovered that ants had attacked the family's sugar jar. The two cousins had a rather troublesome solution when they put the sugar jar in a basin floating in a bucket of water. Of course, the basin and the sugar jar both sank to the bottom of the bucket. Suzu and Harumi had to sadly confess to their grandmother. Suzu was given some savings by her mother-in-law to buy sugar. But when Suzu went to the market to inquire, the price of sugar had increased 50 times. She could only buy a small packet of sugar the size of her hand. On the way back, Suzu got lost in the red light district. Here, the beautiful girls couldn't tell Suzu the way home because they were all people from all over who were forced to come here to serve the military. Fortunately, Suzu met Rin, a kind girl who showed her the way. Talking to Rin, Suzu realized that although she had tasted new and delicious dishes, Rin still dreamed of a simple piece of watermelon, a food she had never eaten because her family was poor. Suzu, Rin, and many other workers at that time had to struggle to survive each day, but their optimistic spirit and strong desire to live always pushed them to keep living, like dandelions adapting to all difficult living conditions. In mid-1944, American air raids attacked Japan, and people had to dig shelters in the sound of air raid sirens ringing day and night. But even in the fierce smoke of war, love still bloomed like a dandelion flower. Keiko had a happy marriage with her husband, a watch merchant. But illness took her husband away, leaving her with the store and 2 children to take care of. Poor Keiko was forced to live with her parents. Although sometimes saddened by witnessing Shusaku and Suzu's love, Keiko's wounds were also somewhat soothed in the loving arms of her family. As for Shusaku and Suzu, to have a chance to go out for a walk with Suzu, Shusaku deliberately left his notebook at home and asked Suzu to bring it to him. Although they couldn't go to the movies or eat at restaurants as planned because the harbor was too crowded, Shusaku's concern was enough to make Suzu feel happy. The peaceful and loving life at present is like a dream that Suzu never wants to wake up from. However, Beautiful love also has challenges that both must overcome together. Suzu's friend Mizuhara returned from the warship and asked to stay at Suzu's husband's house. Mizuhara deliberately showed his close relationship with Suzu, making the atmosphere in the family awkward. Although uncomfortable, Shusaku did not show any anger. He was very delicate and respectful to Suzu, giving Suzu and Mizuhara a chance to talk privately. That night, the conversation between Suzu and Mizuhara took place in an awkward setting. Suzu wondered why Mizuhara didn't express his feelings back then, why he only came back when she had settled into a new life and Suzu had long since fallen in love with Shusaku. Mizuhara regretted it, but he didn't regret what he did back then. The passing of his older brother left a great wound in Mizuhara's heart, making him not brave enough to confess to Suzu. Only when he went to the battlefield, facing the ever-present death, did he miss the image of his little classmate. Finally, Mizuhara respected Suzu's feelings and left. The love stories during the chaotic war, whether budding awkwardly, fleeting with regret, or lost with longing, all somewhat soothe the atmosphere of death and mourning that pervades. In early 1945, the war entered a fierce phase, and American planes appeared more and more frequently. The air raid sirens also rang more often. The remaining young people in the hometown were gradually sent to the front lines, including Shusaku. Suzu gradually realized the danger surrounding her and blamed herself for being too dreamy with her paintings and forgetting reality. Afraid that she would forget Shusaku again, Suzu drew Shusaku while he was asleep, hoping that the painting would soothe her longing for him. Life continued in the small house until one day, the whole family received news that Suzu's father-in-law was hospitalized due to severe head injuries. He was in a coma for many months, and when he woke up, he received shocking news. The Japanese sea had been seized, and the Yamato, the pride of the Japanese Navy, had been sunk. Suzu looked towards the sea with disappointment. So the rabbits on the waves have also disappeared. The war had taken away the inherent peace of the sea. Then, the most painful tragedy of Suzu's life began. On the way back from the hospital, Suzu and Harumi encountered a surprise air raid. They hurriedly hid in a nearby shelter. After the bombing, they left the shelter and continued on their way. Harumi pulled Suzu towards a wall near the sea to see the ships that she always loved. Tragically, the place where the two cousins stood was an unexploded bomb crater. Although she tried to pull Harumi back, it was too late. When she opened her eyes, she only saw her right arm broken in half, and Harumi was gone. Although she was immersed in remorse and pain, she heard Keiko's crying. If only she had held Harumi's hand with her right hand, Harumi wouldn't have been the one to leave. Before the pain was over, the air raid sirens continued to sound. Enemy planes dropped a series of incendiary bombs to burn the city. While everyone was running away, Suzu suddenly became angry. She used her body to extinguish a burning shell in the house, as revenge for the enemy that took Harumi's life. Everyone said words of luck, but Suzu didn't feel lucky at all, as her right arm was gone. The arm that in June was still holding Harumi's hand, in May was still drawing Shusaku, in April was still picking dandelions, in March was still going home, and 2 years ago was still making seaweed. The war not only took away a part of Suzu's body, but also took the lives of her loved ones, forced her to separate from Shusaku, and shattered the inherent peace in her life. The feeling of guilt and pain piled up, pushing Suzu to decide to go back to Hiroshima, despite Shusaku's attempts to stop her. Before leaving, Keiko apologized to Suzu for the words that had hurt Suzu in the moment she learned of Harumi's death. Despite the pain of losing her child, Keiko also understood that Suzu was just a girl who had to leave her family to become a daughter-in-law in a completely unfamiliar place and had suffered too much pain. Hearing Keiko's sincere words, Suzu hugged Keiko and asked to stay, because she had long considered her husband's family as her real family. Before they could settle down, the most devastating nuclear bomb tragedy in human history exploded in Hiroshima, making the sky in Kure turn white. No one knew what happened because the communication lines were cut off. Survivors of the tragedy evacuated everywhere, but quickly passed away after a few days of wandering the streets, leaving a dark shadow like a harsh war verdict. Suzu's parents passed away, and her younger sister Sumi was also infected with radiation. A bright future ahead was now only darkness. On the streets, people were running around to find their loved ones in despair. The war ended. Japan surrendered. Suzu couldn't help but be angry. Why take away her peaceful life, take away her loved ones, push people into hardship, only to finally surrender in disgrace? The meaningless war brought nothing but severe consequences, making a carefree girl like Suzu angry. Not only different in recreating the war from a new perspective, in this corner of the world also goes beyond the pattern of using tragedy to draw tears from the audience. The ending of the film does not dwell on the pain, but aims for a hopeful future, where people devastated by the war rebuild their lives after the war tragedy. In the final scene, a child sits next to a mother whose right arm is broken over many days, until her body gradually dies. The child wanders around, and then one day, a miracle brings him to Suzu and her husband, and so, broken lives are reunited. The child meets someone like his deceased mother, and Suzu feels somewhat comforted after the pain of losing Harumi. Wealth can compensate for material losses, but only love can heal broken souls. The warm light shines again from all the houses, like sparkling stars in the sky. Under each roof, there is hope for a prosperous and happy future. In this corner of the world, although a film set in Japan, is relatable to any nation that has experienced a devastating war. Unlike a sharp knife stabbing straight into the viewer's heart, In This Corner of the World leaves behind a haunting pain that can never fade. The film is like a caramel candy, both sweet and bitter, both gentle and peaceful, and bringing a lingering, haunting sadness. Each of us has small battles to overcome every day. Amidst a life filled with worries, the most peaceful place is a small corner in our soul, being aware of the circumstances, adapting but not being dependent, and above all, cherishing the beautiful and precious things around us is the way out of the harsh vortex of life. Hopefully, whoever you are, whatever you are fighting for, you will always be resilient and aim for a better future like Suzu, like the dandelions that are persistently rising in the storm.